participants. On behalf of School of Architecture and Design, Manipal University Jaipur, I, Nisha Nelson, welcome you all for this career conclave titled The New Landscape, Where Nature Meets Culture. This career conclave will be the platform for students to interact with experts of landscape architecture and can bridge the gap between theory and practice in the profession. This will also help them navigate the evolving landscape, allowing them to learn and understand landscape as a profession. Now, I would like to invite Professor Dr. Madhura Yadav, Dean, Faculty of Design, for delivering the welcome address. Professor Dr. Madhura Yadav, an architect planner with over 25 years of experience, is the Dean, Faculty of Design at Manipal University Jaipur. She is also one of the founder members in establishing Faculty of Design at MUJ and founder head for fashion design, interior design, and planning programs. She is a UNESCO certified mentor for community-based participatory research and an IGBC accredited professional. She has conducted workshops, conferences on waste management, bamboo architecture, earthquake-resistant structures, sustainable cities and buildings, etc. Her current research interests are architecture, ecology interface and ecocities, promotion of eco-materials, and community-based participatory research. She is a recipient of Distinguished Faculty in Architecture Award in 2017 and Educational Leadership Award in 2019. We welcome you, ma'am, and the stage is all yours to take on and start the program.
Thank you, Nisha, for introduction, and good afternoon to one and all present here. I welcome you all for this career conclave, and I take this privilege to say that we are the first in Rajasthan to start a master's program in landscape architecture. And I would like to thank architect Akshay Kaul, who is our mentor, for starting this program. And with the help of architect Akshay Kaul and even Aniket Bhagwat sir, we have prepared our curriculum. And our third intake is in this year. And one batch is graduated, one batch will graduate this year. So we are the first in Rajasthan to start landscape program. And as we all know that there is a climate change and everybody is talking about sustainable development goals. So landscape architects have the greater responsibility on their shoulder to provide an holistic approach to the protection, conservation and enhancement of urban as well as rural landscapes, which takes account of environmental, social, economic conditions. And this approach will assist us in mitigating and adapting to the future climate change and ensure for the future sustainability of our landscapes and the communities within them. So this program, and we have distinguished experts in this panel. So without taking much time, I'll request Kinzel to play one short video of Manipal University Jaipur so that people will know what we are offering and what is the university. Please, over to Kinzel.
Yes, yes ma'am.
Is there any problem, Kinzel? Nisha?
Yes, ma'am. We're playing it in a minute. Just a minute.
Okay.
122 acres of campus area, Manipal University Jaipur aims to unleash the student's potential and transform him into a globally accepted personality. With its heritage excellence in higher education, and within a short span of time, it has ascended itself at a global scale. It is the only private campus in the Rajasthan district that owns a flag of its own. Besides offering a wide choice of multidisciplinary programs, Manipal University is a domain to more than 6,400 students from varied social backgrounds. Manipal University Jaipur has something excellent to offer to every student. Engineering or basic sciences, journalism and mass communications, arts and law, architecture or design, management and commerce. It helps build a global leader out of every student. This university has been awarded with the Smart Digital Campus by Cisco for building the first digital campus of the country. The education here is not confined to books and classrooms. Rather, it personifies the personality and sharpens a student's skills. The university aims to fabricate the centers of brilliance for research and innovation, considering research and development as the integral part to prosper creations of the great innovations of the university and its students. A fully Wi-Fi enabled campus, state-of-the-art digital library, comfortable hostels, well equipped with the latest hardware and software laboratories, multi-cuisine cafeteria, club area, game zone. MUJ is another home for students. The Manipal University Jaipur is designed by the prominent architect Hafiz Contractor, and it owns Yoho, the youth hostel. Students who go for hostel accommodation enjoy the Yoho living experience in addition to the convenience of being right next to the university. Yoho stands for much more than just hostels. It provides safe and comfortable environs both inside and outside the rooms. 850 kilowatt solar power machines are installed on the university terrace area for using sunlight for as many activities as it can. It has been awarded with the Lead Indian Platinum Award for Energy Conservation and Environment Design. The event calendar provides for plethora of music, dance art and festivities that there is an aura of celebrations around the campus. The university holds special annual fests, annual day celebration wherein students can enjoy the different cultural activities and showcase their talent. The farewell party for the students is also organized by the university to bid them warm goodbye and wishes. Manipal University Jaipur is synonymous with excellence in higher education. It thrives to sum up the vast ocean of knowledge and provide an experience to the students where education is celebration.
Thank you, Kinsuk. Thank you, Kinsuk ma'am, for sharing the video. I hope everybody has understood a bit about the environment in MUJ. Now, I would introduce you to our moderator for the event, Architect Sandeep Menon. Architect Sandeep Menon is a landscape architect with 16 years of experience in practicing landscape architecture and ecological design. He's a core faculty member at the Kamla Raheja Vidyanidhi Institute of Architecture and Environmental Studies in Mumbai. Mr. Menon holds a Master of Landscape Architecture and a Bachelor of Architecture degree from the School of Planning and Architecture, New Delhi, and is the recipient of the SPA Gold Medal for the Best Outgoing Student and the Narendra Juneja Endowment Gold Medal 2006 for his master's thesis project. He was the design director at Integral Designs International Studio, New Delhi. He has worked on landscape design and master planning projects of varying scales in various biographies. His work often addresses the ideas of natural processes, local ecology, and native planting. He is currently involved as a research associate in the European Union Erasmus Plus research project for building resilient urban communities. He is also a contributing author to the chapter on socio-ecological resilience to be published in Routledge book and has presented various research papers at both Indian and international venues. We welcome you, sir, and over to you to continue with the event.
Thank you so much, Nisha, for that generous introduction. If I had known, I would not have given you that if you were going to present it as it is. Okay, so let me take this opportunity to invite and introduce our esteemed panelists to this session. We have with us Dr. Sridevi Rao, who is the National Honorary President of the Indian Society of Landscape Architects. Dr. Rao has been practicing as a consulting landscape architect and has also been teaching students of architecture since the year 1982. She has published and presented papers both in India as well as abroad on various aspects of public open spaces in India. She received a doctorate from the School of Planning and Architecture, New Delhi in 2003 for her thesis entitled Dynamics of Open Spaces in Hyderabad. And that was a study that spanned from the years 1591 to 1998. She also holds a postgraduate degree in landscape architecture from SPA Delhi and an undergraduate degree in B.Sc Botany Honours from Miranda House, University of Delhi. Dr. Rao has also been a consultant for more than 200 projects for both the government sector as well as for non-government entities. She's also published a vast number of research papers and book publications. Welcome, Dr. Rao. We are very happy to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you, Sandeep. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next panelist actually needs no introduction in the field of landscape architecture. Please allow me to introduce Professor Akshay Kaul. Akshay specializes in the field of ecological planning, landscape, and sustainable architecture. He has more than 25 years of experience in India and in the US. His area of specialization also includes rainwater harvesting and wastewater management and its integration into landscape design as a design system. He has received numerous awards, including the International Award for Living Design City Competition for Sustainable Cities in 2011. He has also been an advisor to the State Urban Agenda for Rajasthan for master planning for the city of Jaipur and urban environmental development issues. He is on the expert committee of UTPEC and DDA on developing ecological corridors in Delhi. He was also an advisor to Janagraha, a body which looks at urban planning and urban ecology for the Administrative Reforms Commission for the Government of India. Welcome, Professor Kaul, to this session.
Thank you, Sandeep. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you, sir. Our next panelist is architect Varna Shashidhar, who is a landscape architect heading a fabulous regional landscape practice titled VSLA that focuses on the creation of contextual landscapes based out of Bangalore. Architect Shashidhar's inspiration actually stems from the Sri Lankan architect Geoffrey Bawa's work, which galvanizes and seamlessly integrates spaces both built as well as unbuilt, and in many cases revealing the power of landscape architecture as one kind of does it. Following her architecture studies at RV College, Bangalore, Varna won the prestigious Tata and Mahindra scholarships to study landscape architecture at the Harvard University's Graduate School of Design. She also taught at the Career Discovery Program at GSD in 2006 and later on went on to work with award-winning landscape architectural firms like MVVA International and WRT. Her interest lies in the intersection of the building and the natural world. Her work titled The Artist's Retreat has won the recent Royal Institute of British Architects Award for International Excellence and has been commended as a project that showcases the best inside-outside connection. Welcome, Varna, to the panel.
Thank you so much, Sandeep.
Welcome. So I think it's an honor to actually be kind of sharing screen space with all of you on one panel. And thank you very much for inviting inviting me to be here, and also for the invitation to be part of the session. In order to start the conversation, let me just quickly begin, kind of building up the case that we are here for, because I personally find the profession of landscape architecture in India being heavily misunderstood and mostly underestimated in many cases. And I'm sure you would also agree with this, because from being called as garden designers to to those who actually pretty up a site, the role of landscape architects have often been trivialized. But however, there is a lot of theoretical foundation, on which the profession is actually built, and it also covers a diverse range of disciplines. So my first question is actually to Dr. Rao, as in considering that, our profession is so heavily misunderstood, how would you define the role played by landscape architects in today's world?
Thank you, Sandeep. And good morning to everybody here who joined in. I would actually see the role of a landscape architect as a bridge, and it's often been quoted also that we are a bridge between human activity and nature. And going by the theme of this discussion, where nature meets culture, culture is the bridge between nature and human activity. And so I would feel that the way in which this bridge is constructed and facilitates human activity is very important. And that's where landscape architects come in compared to environmental planners or other professionals. We do see human activity as a kind of a central, and the human being the human being himself or herself is a part of our design, like a design element itself, where we use them also to enhance our design. So I would think that a landscape, without a landscape architect, we do find all these other problems which arise where ad hoc retro kind of retrofitting and so on go on, whereas a landscape architect would think from the ground upwards, and therefore we actually are effective in being the bridge between human activity and nature, and enhancing the cultural aspect of what is existing into a realm where it actually contributes to all the ecosystem services which are already there and enhances them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rao, for that, that concise, precise, but, a power-packed answer. Um, I hope I'm audible. I am, right?
Yes, sir, you
Yes.
are.
Yeah, sure. So,
Yes, yes, you're
in order to
audible.
kind of, yeah, thank you so much. In order to kind of, take that question forward, I'll actually ask a follow-up question to Professor Kaul. Because landscape architecture, like how ma'am said, we often find ourselves, in a position which is like in the intersection of, a scientific-based nature studies and an anthropology-based culture studies, like so. Then, and for a very, very long time, this conventional schools of thought have always been kept separate, like nature was always scientific while culture was always, kind of seen through an anthropological lens. But today, with our advent of and this coalescence of of all of these studies kind of coming together, we know that both of these are actually interlinked. Now, in that light, how can landscape architects actually play to strengthen these nature culture interlinks? And how can the landscape architectural pedagogy, kind of help out in setting that stage? Professor Kaul.
Yeah, thanks, Sandeep. So for me, there's a base. The base is our natural systems that have existed, forever. So that is one system that we need to study carefully how it existed. Overlaid always is the system of culture. How we use those systems and how we have interacted with those natural systems over the period of time. And to me, culture is something alive. It is not just past. And culture is something that is always evolving and changing and will keep on changing. So for me, culture is what is going on today and what is needed today. And so what is needed today for me is are these breakdowns in the systems, and hence breakdown in people's lives. Very simply, because these systems have broken down, so there's floods in Kashmir. Because these systems have broken down, there's no drainage, and every time it floods, it rains, Delhi is waterlogged, Bombay is waterlogged. Every time it floods, the flash floods takes the water away and there's drought. So our systems have broken down completely, you know. So how do we re-engage with these systems for today's lifestyle needs and for today's recreational needs, for today's functional needs and the expectation? So to me, that is the level in which landscape architects can come back and play important role. And that role can be played in many ways. And for me, the whole spectrum of landscape architect can actually contribute in many ways, whether it is the relationship of natural systems to agrarian systems, because it takes huge amount of water and water we don't have for that. So how do we come into that picture? Similarly, how do we come into picture of inclusivity of different segments of the society whom we are kind of losing out completely, and hence urban migration? So how do we kind of create work into a realm of engaging with not-for-profit organizations, working with the village systems, and recreating opportunities of both livelihood and restoring those systems and re-engaging and hence those anthropological connections between human beings and re-engaging with the breakdown of systems by fixing them for today's lifestyle. So I think we have a great amount of role to play in almost every system, whether it is natural forests, whether it's national sanctuaries, whether it's urban transportation, you name it. And because if we take this and our systems have to be India based, our needs are very, very specific. And the needs are, we don't have that kind of luxury and money. So our systems have to, hence research plays a very critical role of moving away from business as usual, finding out the gaps, and then coming in as a landscape architect loaded with research work, site-specific interventions. That's what I feel.
Sure. Thank you, sir, for that wonderful answer. Yeah. So just to kind of take this conversation forward, the next question is to you, Varna. Like how Professor Akshay actually, kind of mentioned that landscape architects deal with multiple issues, and multiple realms, in fact, be it starting from analyzing the natural processes that are happening at a site to actually finding the site suitability, kind of realizing where do we really place a building. So the role of a landscape architect does not come post the architectural design, but it kind of initiates this whole process. And also, kind of interpreting the cues of the land, water, climate, and kind of being sensitive enough to interpret them and respond to them. And also to kind of design meaningful spaces for the inhabitants. So when I say inhabitants, I mean both the human as well as the non-human. So in this larger realm of things, we often find that the profession involves concepts and we kind of scaffold onto various other disciplines as well. How would you explain the importance of this multidisciplinarity in landscape architecture to our listeners? Thank you.
Thank you so much, first of all, Professor Sandeep, for the glowing introduction that you provided for me, and I'd really like to thank Manipal University for inviting me to be a part of this wonderful panel with wonderful professionals, Professor Akshay and Professor Sridevi. Thanks so much for the opportunity, and I think the question is so thoughtful. I really feel that landscape architecture is really about looking beyond any set boundaries since it addresses a diverse range of issues, whether it's climate, water, soils, and also habitats and so on. So every project, even if it's a small project, has the potential to make a systemic impact. So, by not limiting ourselves, but taking cues from different disciplines, while conceptualizing and evolving the design, we can only make that whole process much richer. Globally, landscape architecture profession has had professionals from diverse disciplines and backgrounds, whether it's textile design, fashion, literature, anthropology, environmental science, and so on. And it's not only confined to the architecture background. So I really feel that this perhaps leads to evolving richer and more distinct approaches and design solutions to projects. So multidisciplinary collaborations only make a project richer, and the process of working on a project is very exciting at that stage. So also being landscape architects, we're really fortunate to be collaborating very frequently with other professionals, whether they are architects, structural consultants, electrical engineers, sometimes scientists like hydrologists, also creatives like artists and environmentalists. So, and also during the process of making of the landscape, the collaborations with craftspeople who've perfected their craft over generations, or maybe local nurseries. So I think there is always a lot to learn from these collaborations, and much to explore and really push in our own design.
Sure, thank you. I think that was fairly explanatory, and that also kind of brings up a lot more questions, which we will eventually come to. But before, I throw the session open to the participants to actually ask questions. I have a few more, kind of prompts rather than questions. So, in 2022, like we live in an increasingly urban world, right, wherein more than half of the world's population is actually living in urban areas. And so this is often seen as, something which is an issue because it obviously creates multiple issues, being densities, and especially that was felt during the pandemic, like there were questions of density versus accessibility to open spaces, the availability, and whether they were really public or really open, or was it just an open space on a Google Earth image when you see it, from up above. And at the same time, cities also allow for multiple opportunities. They kind of galvanize a space wherein those social inhibitions of the rural areas are kind of lost, where people actually find newer opportunities. And it's like a cauldron of melting, cultures and communities where people interact, and there are many, many great things about a city. So my question is actually to all three of you. Maybe I can start with Dr. Rao and then move to Professor Akshay and Avarna, and it could be the other way around as well. So as a landscape architect, how do you see the situation? This an increasingly urbanizing world with its larger set of problems, but with the micro level opportunities that it gives, and where do we as landscape architects, kind of find ourselves in this?
Yeah. Can I answer that? I mean, just
Definitely,
put in
Dr.
my
Rao.
thoughts.
Go ahead. Go ahead,
Uh, Actually, I think compared to in the other, the Western planning concepts which have been taught to us, where we have, um, quantitative distribution of spaces and so on, public spaces. If we come to India in particular, or Africa or any of the Southeast Asian nations beyond their cities, we would find that every space is used as a public open space during some time of the year, or all during the entire year, depending on seasons and during the day, the diurnal fluctuations and so on. And our festivals rotate around that as well. So, looking at that, I would feel that during the pandemic, uh, the difference that I would kind of would like to share is that, which is not documented, of course, but that in India and other very dense cities, including Tokyo, uh, there was there was a perception that public space actually crossed the realm of quantitative, um, distribution, and that the streets, all kinds of spaces, even the animals from the forest came and occupied our spaces which were open, which was a street. You found exotic animals actually wandering around, and those visuals were very viral all over social media, if we can recall. So similarly, people also went around and actually rediscovered in some places and in some cities, or they kind of reinforced the fact that everything outside the building can be a public space, and therefore this boxing in people in quantitative little rectangles or uh, uh, squares of greenery also. We even look at spaces like Maidans which are not green at all. It is about activity. Maybe that is the differentiating factor which kind of allowed us to cope through the pandemic and not actually lose out on accessing nature through many ways in which it expresses itself. So I think we were in a good place in spite of the pandemic, in that we rediscovered and reinforced our uh, accessibility and the safety in numbers, where we actually looked at open spaces. And I think there many authors have tried to document that fact as well, though it's yet to be published. We can look forward to those books, I think, in maybe a year or so. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, ma'am. Professor Kaul, would you like to answer the question?
Yeah, I think India is slightly different in terms of numbers. It's more like 70-30, 70 still being rural and 30 being urban, and that large chunk of people come to the cities, resulting into what I call chaos from and the inability to handle those large numbers that come suddenly, an influx. And so to me, the urban areas and how we can come in is at various levels play this role from what I call from chaos to order, some semblance of order. Whether it is our streets, organizing our people, organizing our natural systems. So that's, I think, one thing that we really need to relook at when it comes to urban areas. Second, I feel is everything is fragmented, you know, whether it's the water, whether it's the forest, whether it's the land, it's kind of fragmented. So we kind of need to have an approach where we relook at it and reconnect it and realign our thought processes hence, you know. So redirecting water into a park system and making it a new kind of a recreational opportunity. And hence, which is the third thing that comes is complete marginalization. And if we look at the map of Google map of city of Delhi, then suddenly you'll find all of East Delhi hardly has any open space. Sangam Vihar, Khadar, and compare it next to Lutyens Delhi, or compare Sangam Vihar to Sainik Farm. The distribution is so lopsided. So and then hence so a lot of areas have gotten marginalized. Then how do you kind of include them into this process of our urban open space system? And finally, what I call is, nature in the city, we don't understand really. It's like Sridevi said, it's everywhere. Once we make it part of our work and thought process and bring it from the background to the foreground, rather than just making hardcore structures and paved areas, but looking at nature as a city, an opportunity for wilderness, an opportunity for greater forest, opportunity for green infrastructure, opportunity for clean air. I feel we need to refocus our engagement with the city and prioritize these issues that will help not just the administration, but all the things that we face as quote unquote problems in the city. We can look at solving them by looking at open space in a different manner.
Sure. Thank you, sir, for that answer. Over to you, Varna.
I think both Professor Sridevi and Professor Kaul have managed to cover everything which deals with rejuvenation in some sense, with Professor Sridevi talking about the city being open to other species as well, and Professor Kaul talking about, flows in some sense. So I think the pandemic has only made us realize that landscape can be much more than something aesthetic, and really the performative quality of what landscape can really have, and how landscape can perhaps adopt a more systemic approach. I think nothing has been more important than the importance of public open spaces, especially during the pandemic, and the importance of landscape, and perhaps in some sense recouping and going back to community building. So it just made people realize the value of it more, and I hope the expression of landscape post pandemic will have greater meaning and resonance in the kind of approach people take to designing.
Hi, Sati. Sorry, but really want to get in with the discussion as I'm not an expert and analyst, but still want to add on as the ma'am says, Varna ma'am says, the Shri Devi ma'am says, and the Akshasa says, okay, landscape is not just about the gardens, just about the plants. It's about all kind of species. It's about the expansion, as nowadays landscape is all about expanding the domain and looking for all the issues. It's not just about the gardening. So here in MUJ also, we have created a new curriculum which talks and which respond to the new issues based on the society issues, the species, recently the species world's issues. One of our student, he recently is, she has recently worked and acknowledged and understand the lost habitat of birds in MUJ and try to recreate that habitat once again in MUJ. So this is all about a landscape. It's not, there is a very wrong perception everybody is having that landscape architecture, it's all about just planting plants, planting trees, shrubs. It's beyond that. So even as we are having lack of time, I would really like to show one of her work, but maybe in the end I'll be putting that.
Sure, Kinzer. We'll give you some time at the end. So yeah. So maybe just to kind of take this forward, I just received a few questions from the students as well. So those of you who really want to ask a question could possibly raise your hand. There is an option to do that on the top bar, called reactions. If you click on that, there is raise a hand option. You can raise a hand and we'll, give you an opportunity to unmute and ask. Well, somebody was just waiting for it, it seems. It's Ms. Anupama Bharti. Okay, over to you, Anupama.
Thank you so much, Sandeep. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. And it was a wonderful discussion. So I have a question. Like, if we look into the history, the definition of the definition of landscape architecture has been, drastically changed from paintings to garden design to industrial revolution to park systems to ecological landscape conservation and to design the open spaces of the cities, which are now currently shaping up the future cities. So specifically in Indian context, now we are jumping into the idea of landscape urbanism, though India is having very beautiful vernacular open spaces since many years. So my question is that what landscape architecture play an important role in shaping the future cities by jumping into the concept of landscape urbanism, or by the conserving the open spaces which India has already had in since many ages.
Do you want to address your question to any panelists in particular, Anupama, or is it in general?
Anybody can answer the questions.
Okay, sure. And Anupama, would you be kind enough to introduce yourself to everyone once? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. So, hello everyone. I'm Anupama Bharti, and landscape architect and assistant professor from School of Planning and Architecture, Bhopal. Yeah, thank you so much.
Dr. Rao, would you like to answer that or the question?
We can take a shot at it, but I just wanted to share that nowhere has it been defined that vernacular is only in the rural realm. So vernacular is something that people where a design evolves in the way they have their habitats which are designed around, and where they live, work, and recreate. So keeping that out of the way, that vernacular is a kind of a rural realm, I mean, is related to the rural realm. We would find that in most of our cities in India, especially, there are these pockets, where we gravitate towards, and even tourists come from outside to come and see and experience. And these are a kind of a relationship between the built and the natural. Even if we go back in history, we find that most of our shrines are not related to any particular religion. Always they are related to spaces of beauty, hilltops, or riversides, or forests. So it's always been a relationship, and this relationship between the built and the natural. Maybe as a shrine, as an example I've just shared. But if you take anything else, it would be a kind of a coming together of the built and the natural, and then creating a space where people come to recreate, or live, or work, or kind of get in touch with one another. So if I've understood the point correctly, it was more, I think, a kind of a sharing of a thought process rather than a actual question, if I'm not wrong, Anupama. So I would
Yes, yes.
think that,
Yeah.
yeah. So I would think that even within our cities, we do have this kind of the vernacular, within quotes, the kind of character which I think you're referring to. And
Yeah.
but because of our training in colleges and our syllabi, and the kind of Western grounding that we get
Hmm.
in and making things quantitative, especially in landscape architecture, where it is a very fluid kind of situation, which even when we design, by the end of our design process and handing over a project to a client, we find lots of changes have already taken place in terms of
Yeah.
thoughts and inputs, because we are a team player. Landscape architects uh, are always a team player. We may head a team, or we may be a part of a team, and that is what brings in the richness of what we put on the ground, so that people's lives are uh, uh, more rich in terms of how they react to their habitat and all those. So I feel that we just need to rediscover, document, and use the tools which are already there. We do find, in our all our students are taken to historical places and said, oh, we had these passive environmental tools, through architecture and through garden design, where we allowed temperatures to come down, and where we allowed the breeze to reach the viewer or the user. So it is all there. But then once we bring back our students to the studio, do we actually allow them to use those tools in their design, studio design? We don't. We always look for evaluating them against these other theories, which are imported, or which kind of the helicopter effect. Some people call it the helicopter effect, where something, absolutely alien, which is not, even seen in many places, is, kind of imposed on the student, and they are forced to design like that. And perhaps that is the gap we find in practice. Um,
Hmm.
if you For example, when we all travel, we actually see the details we study and draft are actually, you can see them in the pavement, in the kind of level differences, in the working details that we do in the studio. We find
Hmm.
them in actual cities and all that, when we go to Singapore, or maybe London, where I am, or anywhere else. But when we come to India, we find it's very different. The curb detail is different in all the cities, in different parts of the cities, you know. So I think this
Right.
is the gap we need to kind of
Yeah.
acknowledge, and
Hmm.
bring in what works best for us, and allow the students to have the freedom to kind of innovate in the studio itself,
Hmm.
which we are not doing right now. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I think that kind of, kind of answered the concern, so very well. Uh, d- do the other panelists have anything to add, or can we move to the next question if it's okay?
Is there a next question?
Yes, there is. Yes, there is. And it's a very
Okay.
pragmatic question from a student. So and the question is very direct. The question is like this. I would like to know what exactly will we be learning in the 2 years master's program of landscape architecture, and what kind of exposure will we get, and how does specializing in landscape make us stand out from the others?
Well,
This is quote
I can
unquote.
take that. I'll take that. I'll take that first with the reference of MUJ, because we really tried hard to create a program um, that is relevant to the present time and the needs. A program that looks at the Sustainable Development Goals, which the UN has kind of put forward for the whole world to look at. And the first part is poverty. You know, food for everyone, environment, and access to education, stuff like that. So the program here at MUG actually is very interesting in the sense that it is multidisciplinary. It allows you to look into your own country, into your own culture, natural history, cultural history, where we stand today in time in terms of these systems, natural, cultural, and what is the need today, and then give the students complete free opportunity to look at the problem. So go out and look at problems. Come back and tell us what the problems are. Research about those problems and different ways in which people have tried to address it in scientific manner. Go to the field and see what's going around and tell us, take on the mantle and leadership, and come back, and then you solve the problem. It's the most pragmatic approach to design that you will get ever, to planning and design, where you have complete freedom to actually go out and choose what is the problem that is going on, almost giving you the freedom of creating almost like a politician would do, or a bureaucrat would do. And you have that leeway of creating a policy, of creating a plan, and creating a solution, and engaging with people to create an opportunity to resolve that. Uh, so that is how we are looking at it. And then the context is, if day-to-day issues, if flooding is happening in your city or in your neighborhood, how does a landscape architect step in? If birds are vanishing, how does a landscape architect step in? If the wind is coming in and throwing dust into your houses, how does a landscape architect step in? If there is drought happening in your city, how does a landscape architect come in? So we kind of opened it up. And the best part, I think, about the program at MUJ is that you get one semester to do whatever you want. You can travel, you can research, you can go abroad, and literally do shape your own career. But as a landscape architect in general, what you'll be able to do is you will be able to understand different sciences. You'll be able to understand how an architect works. You'll be able to understand how different fields work. You will be able to actually come out and have the option of contributing in a big way, whether you choose to work at a city level, you work with city administrations and offices and planners, you choose to work with not-for-profit organizations, you choose to work with the institutions, you want to have your own practice. So the realm the canvas is completely wide, and what you get skilled at is the ability to integrate, ability to understand different systems, different sciences, different cultures, arts, crafts, and the ability to integrate that to solve beautifully and create a piece of landscape where human beings and nature interact. And you can do that for every project by redefining the scope. So we give you that special ability to integrate systems, human needs, and culture and history, and come out with something innovative and something new.
Sure. Thank you so much, sir. That question was actually from Ms. Ria Rathod, who's a student at Amity University in Madhya Pradesh. I'm sorry, I forgot to read out her name. Kinshal, in this context, would you like to share the students' work, to everybody here so that, at least they can see? Yeah,
Yes, yes.
sure.
Thank you so much,
You're welcome.
Sandeep. I'll do that.
Manipal University is located 25 kilometers from the city of Jaipur in the dry region of Rajasthan. The site selected for the studio project is 2.3 acres of open space located directly adjacent to the faculty residential block of MUJ. Surrounding the site is the residential blocks on the northern side and a road that runs along the perimeter on the south. The morphology of the site is characterized by dry desert sandy soil. The space has been left untouched and unbuilt on for the past 7 years, and the strong dust storms carrying the top fertile soil from the site onto the faculty housing is posing to be the biggest concern of the residents. And to overcome this current problem, huge fences are being built as a barrier, but a more permanent and environmental sensitive approach must be taken moving forward. Many species of birds, red wattle lapwing, jungle babbler, rose-ringed parakeet, and oriental magpie robin are seen on the site. The aim of the project is to create a habitat for these local birds and thus provide them a space for its nidification, breeding, and nurture. The objective is to create vegetation for the breeding of the birds on site, to identify and introduce host trees and desired habitat to cater to the nidification habitats of these birds, and finally involving community participation to experience the bird's habitat, in which in turn helps in spreading awareness about the conservation of the same. The perceived characteristics of the site is understood, and the nature in which the birds intervene is identified. Sighting along a section of the site is identified. The site is then classified as a disturbed habitat due to the absence of natural desired habitat of the birds. The red wattle lapwing is a ground nesting bird and forages on worms and insects from the soil. It makes a semicircular depression in the ground and roosts there at night. It is found on flat agricultural land or near freshwater ponds. The jungle babbler nests on the open branches of Madagascar almond on site. Desired habitat of the jungle babbler. The host trees and shrubs are absent on site. Hence, the site is ruled out as a disturbed habitat for the jungle babblers and small birds. The bird paths are observed every morning from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. and in the evenings from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. to identify the circulation. This is taken into consideration while planning of the habitat zones on the site. The objective is to create a suitable habitat for the birds, which will lead to more suitable habitats due to seed dispersal and pollination by small birds. This leads to increase in the number of nectivorous and frugivorous birds and also will raise the number of insects. This in turn attracts insectivorous birds. Hence, the ecological cycle is maintained on the site. The site will have the following suitable desired environments. Dense shrubs and tall grasses provide nesting habitats for small birds like jungle babbler and oriental birds like red wattle lapwing. Dense tree plantation provides nesting cavity and habitats for perching of birds like rose-ringed parakeet and oriental magpie robin. Leaf litter provides foraging space for jungle babbler. Finally, human interaction is also designed with minimal intervention. The site is then studied to understand its characteristics, and the zoning and design of the desired habitat of the birds is done accordingly.
Thank you, Ms. John, for that. I mean, that's such a lovely project, it's so heartening to see that the studio allows for a student to express her or his concerns, like not within the confines of a drafting board. It's not the plan, the section, or the elevation trio that architects are so used to, kind of using to convey images. It's so nice to see that, that you're breaking the barriers and allowing for movie making, and that is such a professionally done work. I mean, it's heartening to see that. Thank you so much for
I
sharing.
Yeah.
just
We
wanted to
we
add something here. Kinzel, do you want to share the image I
yes,
sent you?
yes. I was
So,
about to.
so this is just part one where she explores a way of solving the issue of erosion. And then this is what has happened on the site after that. So they have engaged, the students has taken the initiative to engage with the university and the community of farmers outside. And hence there are no more of those GI sheeting barricades, but they are doing these temporary crops through the whole year. And they are not using the crops. The crops land becomes place for the birds to feed on now. It controls the erosion. It's a place for feeding and nesting, and it solves the whole issue. And they engage with the farmers, and the farmers taught them how to do it, and they did it for free for them. And that's how you use. There's an issue, a student identifies it, creates a design, communicates that with the university. The university engages with the farmers, and you come back and bring change. And so that's so heartening to see somebody doing stuff like that. And that's what we feel is the need of the hour in the country.
Absolutely, sir. And can't agree more. Thank you so much for sharing that bit of it, the snippet as well. So if there are any further questions, the participants can raise their hands virtually, or if not, I have one last final question for everyone, for each of the panelists. We'll wait. Tick, tick one, tick, tick two. Yes, here comes a question. So it's from Abhishek. Yeah, hi Abhishek. You may unmute yourself and shoot your question.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for this wonderful panel and discussion. I had a small question which I've been thinking about for some time now, but I wanted to ask the panel, um, how do you see the digital technologies transforming our profession going forward? With the ideas of AI and machine learning, and how all of those are coming in our world, and of course the Gen Zs and Gen Alphas, really trying to embrace that. So, and especially with this beautiful video we just saw, the even the sense of expression, like all of that really comes together beautifully, I think. So, how does the panel see sort of the digital technologies really transforming our profession?
I think it's a great opportunity, Abhishek. Thanks for asking the question and joining. AI, I mean, we've been working with some of them. Um, and right there in San Francisco, I think Bay Area, not San Francisco, is the seat at Stanford for one of the best ways of mitigating flooding using AI, and it's being headed by an Indian from Kashmir who got so concerned about the 2014 floods, and the city of San Francisco actually contacted them. So they were able to demonstrate with just such short time by how they can simulate the entire process of where it's going to start flooding, which agents, which places, out. So you can use that so much. Similarly for heat island effect, the University of Nagpur is working so much with Seeds India. Uh, and then we work a lot with satellite imagery, getting 100-year-old data, simulating floods and simulating water models, uh, and so it's an amazing tool for especially for planning, and using that data you can come and do anything with it. So it's complete limitless, and we look upon opportunities of interacting more and more with firms and agencies where we can bring the system. I have seen stuff which is not out in the public domain. Every little bit of Delhi is drone imaged, it's all there. It's just, we have the opportunity to work with that set of data. We can completely transform. The entire Delhi is mapped. Its drainage systems, its pipeline, everything is mapped. It's just that we need to have, access to that, work with that level of technology, and then we can demonstrate what kind of change we can bring in city planning and design and lives of people. I think it's a great tool.
Varna, would you like to add to Abhishek's prompt?
I don't think I have much to add. Professor Akshay was very thorough.
Sure. I think that is a fabulous question, Abhishek, and it's also nice to see that that landscape architects, when we speak of AI and newer technologies, we actually talk about how can positive changes be brought about, rather than the expression that we find in most architectural discourses, wherein it becomes more of an optical or an ocular parametric design being this fashionable thing to kind of look forward to. So I guess that's probably one of the key, things that I would take as a takeaway, when landscape architects have to interact with these newer technologies, and, the outcomes are probably way more meaningful. So, I mean, that's heartening to see. Thank you, Abhishek, for that question. You forgot to introduce yourself. If you may take 2 minutes to kind of do that. Thank you.
I don't need to, but sure. Hi, everyone. This is Abhishek Sharma, and I'm a landscape architect and an architect. And I became a landscape architect because of Sandeep. I've worked with Sandeep for a long time in Delhi. I'm calling in from San Francisco, where I am right now, and I work with AECOM, and I'm a senior associate with them. And I saw it, saw this post, Sandeep, on your LinkedIn. So I was like, oh my God, I have to join. And I'm glad I did. So thanks, everyone on the panel.
Thank you so much, Abhishek, and I'm glad that you logged in. Okay, so if there are no further questions, then maybe I have one last question for the panelists. Or if there are questions, I mean, we still can accommodate one more. Do we wait? Because I'm usually the shy guy who'll wait and wonder, should I or should I not? So I think I should give everyone a fair chance.
The shy guy is very bold and smart now. You're no more shy.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, so here's a question. And this is something that we find quite a lot, when we speak of landscape architecture in India, that there is something that's taught within the studio, there is research and academics, and pedagogy and all of it that kind of are confined within the four walls of the studio space, while what really happens at site is a entirely different ball game. And it's a general perception. It's also something that many of us who are practicing landscape architects would possibly relate to. But the reality is that research really plays a very, very important role in the profession. And I'm thankful that the faculty members at MU Jaipur were kind enough to share the students' work, that kind of exemplifies this. But however, since all three of you panelists are also professionals who do real life projects, would you like to throw some light on how have you integrated this idea of research in your design projects? Maybe you can use an example of a project, so that it becomes more interesting for the ones who have tuned in. Would you like to go first, Varna, and then maybe we can reverse the order this time?
Sure. I think I personally feel that research is often, backbone to practice. Quite simply, whether it's really understanding the site and context, or whether it means evolving a vision for the project. So I think research per se can add a lot of ground and depth to practice. So I feel research validates design, and it's also very useful to and helps clients or key stakeholders within a project to really quickly and easily grasp and appreciate the value of the project even before it's built. Often, I feel that the aesthetics and experiential qualities of a project you can really appreciate or understand only after it's realized. So this is where research becomes really important, and metrics I feel is as important as the intangible qualities of landscape. So that's something, and I also feel that in my practice I generally look at research being a necessity, not really an afterthought. So it's not highlighted as a particular segment or aspect, And I feel utilizing a research component to practice just enables the design to be more responsive to a place, but also whatever you're creating, there is a sense of resiliency that's already built up into the project. So that's where I think research works. And what I have observed through studies and being mentored, that some of the best landscape architecture practices globally and worldwide have always looked at weaving research into practice. Also, sometimes people who teach and are a part of academia, sort of looking at extending what they do in their design studios into academic studios, and that way exploring. I think ideally, if this is possible even in master's programs in India, such as the Manipal program, which I think is fantastic. Just looking at the student work and the amount of exposure and freedom that they've got, then the graduating students would also approach profession as a continuum of studio. So I think in my own practice, whether it's a project such as Bangalore International Center, which is all about phytoremediating plants that phytoremediate, cleanse soil, cleanse water, or another project where it's a retreat in Sri Lanka by a lagoon, looking at this water-land interface and really looking at it in terms of habitat and looking at the impacts of it on the local fishing community. So I think research just strengthens projects.
Thank you so much, Varna, for that answer. Akshasa, would you like to follow it up with your...
I'll qualify what Varna was saying, that the students, when they graduate, will take it further in the profession. That's the whole idea of the program, so that they get an anchor and they can carry on with that. And it's very heartening to see one of our students, Nehal. She's focus was on avifauna. And now after graduating, she's setting up websites with school children and on birds in their school. And she's focusing on that. So the whole idea was that once the student graduates, they find some focus and they carry on with that. And it's very heartening for me to see that. And coming to the question, my practice is completely, starts with research, and research to me has different dimensions. For me, the site itself is a place where you go and see again and again and again, and you ask a million questions and you understand that you don't know a lot of stuff. And so we talk to elderly people in that zone to understand about their lives, how they worked on, and to find out the natural history of the place. So for us, that's very important. And that we do that through interaction with people, through research papers, through scientific papers, people who have worked. So a lot of research also happens because our projects are from different geographical areas, and hence plants which are an integral part of our work. We have to research first what happens. We go into the gazetteers, we go into scientific papers to find out what will grow there easily, and then to actually find nurseries or sources for that. And every place has a different below the surface things that are going on. So the system that we use in Bhuj is completely different for water conservation as opposed to what we are doing in Kashmir or what we are doing in Uttaranchal. And more our work is informed by integrating it with hydrogeologists. So for instance, we realize through the process that we are going to create out on the edge of India near Narayan Sarovar is a very different set of stuff because of the salinity in the ground and how to conserve that and how to recharge. So it's very interesting. Similarly, we also try to understand how people live. So we are working with nomadic and Gujjar people and Bakarwals in Kashmir, and we want to understand how they live, what they eat, how they forage, and how to bring all of that And we went on to the site and I saw like 15 to 20 wildflowers. I didn't know all of them. I came back, I researched, and then with the help of others, I taught them how to, they would have cut the grass for the cattle in the winter. We stopped that. So we said, we'll take 40% of this and collect the seeds. So the first time I taught the Gujars who would remove the grass to collect the seeds. Now for every site, we are collecting seeds from the grasses. And then we had to learn how to store them. And then we had to learn how to put them back during spring. So it's an ongoing process for innovation. The innovation to me can only happen by research. So it's a very integrated part of our work.
Thank you so much, Professor Akshay. That was, I mean, it was amazing to hear, the diversity of of the projects as well as the issues and how you've kind of looked at the idea of research in your practice. Over to you, Dr. Rao.
Thank you, Sandeep. It was very, very interesting to listen to and Akshay also. I have mostly dealt with industrial landscapes, and each industry has its own problems, which have to be solved, and therefore they call the landscape architect. Of course, these days the fashion is to have industrial corridors itself, whereas in the 80s and 90s it was more of individual industrial projects. And there, the and also I wanted to add about research that why I ended up with a PhD. I've never been a part of any institution as permanent faculty, or I've always been a visiting faculty. And the reason I took up this my PhD work was because there was no data about what we were doing on the ground, as the other panelists have also explained. But then, why did it need a PhD? Was because it dealt with public open space and not getting enough funding, because parks and gardens were seen as places where antisocial activities go on. That was the perception among the lawmakers, at least in the erstwhile Andhra Pradesh, after speaking to many of them personally. So this kind of gap had to be bridged because we were working on the Buddha Purnima project around Hussain Sagar Lake, which is a lake in central Hyderabad and so on. And so we needed data, and then of course it got converted into a PhD. But coming to the my work itself in industrial landscapes, the I think a few years ago the latest was the uh, Korea-sponsored industrial corridor near Delhi. But the differences between our other projects and industrial projects is that we do have a specific problems which need to be solved in terms of land, water, and soil pollution. And we do take uh, uh, the help of vegetation, but phyto remedies are slow, and they are kind of the the expertise to maintain them in an industrial context is put aside in a sense. It's not a part of a priority for them because of other we all are aware of the number of licenses and the kind of government permissions they need. So there is a kind of a involvement and uh, um, uh, you know uh, and in your spare time, you maybe, you would look at the landscape, whereas we would actually, as activists, kind of uh, educate the management and tell them that the importance of landscape in kind of mitigating even mental issues of workers, because through their shifts, through the kind of, especially in the pharmaceutical industry, in the painting industry in Ankleshwar, Gujarat, and so on, the kind of issues they face, and the interaction that they need during their work schedules is very important. And through our practice we have tried to kind of engage the management itself in actually taking care of their workers by providing spaces which also act as uh, solutions for reducing land, water, and soil pollution. So that has been very, very interesting. For example, in Vizag Port Trust, though it's not an industry, of course, but we found that the loading and unloading of cargo, especially fertilizer, which was imported, the wind direction was towards Vishakhapatnam city. So we had to design windbreaks and shelter belts, and because it was coastal area, so and we had to look at species which would withstand the salt content in the air and also in the soil. So all those were very, very interesting, uh, learnings for us. And I think all of us would agree that every single landscape architecture, landscape project, landscape any project we do as a landscape architect is a learning, isn't it? We it's always new for us. It's never that it's just a setting and then the building. For if you we take the example of architecture, that the building techniques are the same, or if it's a hospital anywhere, because of the technical schedules and so on, it's always kind of restricted. But whereas for us, the fantastic and the interest which goes on and which perhaps still brings in work. For example, in my case, I'm technologically very, very challenged. So we take the help of our young colleagues and so on. But I think in every single project for a landscape architect is this newness, and this this requirement for research. I think that is the one which keeps us going, and because we are learning it all the time. However much we've done or whatever we've done, it is never enough. And I think that's the great part of landscape architecture, which gives a richness to all of us. And we go and share it back with the students we teach. We involve with government, we involve with administration, we involve with the people who live off the ground. We get involved with their livelihoods, and that's the richness of landscape architecture, I think. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I mean, it was really, really interesting to actually hear your diverse perspectives, all the panelists, and then actually very, very heartening to understand that, that research is an integral part of how you view your practice, or it's almost like a part of the process in which, you kind of look at practice. And that also kind of points out to the importance of having a very solid base of being able to see, being able to discern these patterns and understand, and that's exactly where a good landscape architecture masters, kind of plays a role. So I hope this session may have been, kind of helpful for the ones who have logged in to understand a little bit about where landscape architecture is and, where is it kind of positioned, how is it kind of moving on. So with that, I think we can possibly end the session because we've moved on. So I'll hand over the session to Ms. Nisha. Thank you so much, panelists, for kind of joining in, and thank you so much for inviting me to be the moderator. Thank you. Over to you,
Thank
Nisha.
you so much, Sandeep, for conducting the session so seamlessly and wonderfully. It has been so engaging, and of course, our panelists. What an engaging and enlightening session it has been. All the participants, I'm sure, has much to take from it. Now, without further ado, I would like to invite architect Sunanda Kapoor, Head of School of Architecture and Design, for delivering the vote of thanks. Over to you, ma'am.
Yes, thank you, Nisha. And Sandeep, I would say you have beautifully carried out the entire discussion. And definitely, I do agree with that the landscape architecture is not well understood by most of the people. So all the questions which were means it was a quite engaging, and you have engaged all the panelists with a very means correct and to the point questions. Means all the aspects like
Ma'am, you have been muted.
so what is the relevance of landscape in this era of urbanization, or what is the scope of landscape experts, and how landscape experts can contribute at a macro and the micro level? So all the aspects have been covered very beautifully. So I thank you, Sandeep, for carrying the entire show and accepting our invite to be a moderator. So formally now I would, on the behalf of School of Architecture and Design, I would like to thank all our panelists, Dr. Sri Devi Roy,
our own architect Akshay Kaul sir and architect Varna for very good, means the discussion was very interesting, means even I was not able to miss it even for a minute. And then I would like to thank our Kinzel, architect Kinzel, our EMAC program coordinator, and architect Nisha for coordinating the entire event. And in the last, I would like to thank our Dean, Faculty of Design, Dr. Madhura Yadav, for making this entire event happen and cooperating for each and every aspect. Thank you from School of Architecture and Design. Yes.
Thank you so much,
Thank you,
ma'am.
everyone.
Before we break off, I would request if all the participants could turn on the video for a group photograph, if you may, because in these virtual events, this is all we can. Wonderful, wonderful.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So I would, like to mention that the recording of this session would be uploaded in our YouTube channel shortly. You guys can access that. Thank you so much for joining us today and have a wonderful weekend. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.